The Author's Shelf.
The Author's Shelf.
The Author's Shelf. The Author's Shelf. It's about books and stuff.
Good afternoon, I'm Georgie Donaghy and welcome to a very special edition of The Author's Shelf. Now, my guest today raises that age-old question for me. If you could ask your favourite celebrity, author or sporting personality one question, what would you ask them? Well, thankfully, Jackie French will be my guest for the entire show, so I won't have to come up with that one question.
Your community, your station, 2SR.com.au.
Now it's time to welcome today's guest. Jackie French is the best-selling author of over 140 books, including the iconic Diary of a Wombat and Hitler's Daughter. Her writing career spans 25 years and her books have been translated into 36 languages. She's won over 60 awards in Australia and overseas. In fact, she's one of the few writers to have won both literary and children's choice awards. Diary of a Wombat is loved the world over and has been on the bestseller list across the world. Jackie is committed to both the environment and wildlife conservation. She's also a strong advocate for the rights of children with learning difficulties. In November last year, Jackie was announced as the Australian Children's Laureate for 2014 and 15. She has been very supportive of my website, Creative Kids Tales, and when I emailed my writer friends about the Author's Shelf, Jackie was the first one to respond. I could go on and on about this national treasure, but I'm sure you would rather hear from the lady herself. Jackie French, welcome to the Author's Shelf.
Hi, I was just thinking it should probably be the author's floor, because how you can tell an author, because they're covered in books and manuscripts and scraps of paper and piles of things sort of pottering up in between the silverfish.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you very much, Jackie. Now, Jackie, I usually start off by asking my guests what's their story. And as stories are best started from the beginning, please tell us, what is the Jackie French story?
Oh dear. By the time you get to my age, it's a long story with a lot too much melodrama. Born in Sydney, moved to Brisbane when I was 3, and was lucky enough to have parents and grandparents who read to me, who told me stories from history. By the time I was 3, I could read by following my mother's finger across the page, which was a really good thing because I'm severely dyslexic. I can't sit in a form. I get lost in car parks. In fact, at four-ways, I can't really work out which side of the road to drive on, but don't tell the traffic authority because I really, really do avoid city traffic. I never would have learned to read at school, but at school I was incredibly lucky enough to have the most wonderful teacher who was only about 18 or 19. I couldn't read Run, Spot, Run. I couldn't read a single word on the blackboard, but she discovered that I'd immediately snuck into the library at lunchtime and was frantically leaping my way through Black Beauty to see how the book ended. And she realised that somehow this kid who couldn't read one single word could read a book. And she also discovered that I could tell stories. So by the time I was 6, I was allowed to tell the class a story for the last 20 minutes of school time, as long as the class had behaved themselves, which in retrospect was probably very useful for my teachers. And the rest of the class kept me doing it even when we got other teachers. Left home at 15. I had been told by teachers, by my parents, look, with the best of intentions, no dear, you cannot make a living as a writer in Australia. So I did all sorts of other things, from a failed career as an echidna milker to cooks, public servants, etc., after I'd finished uni. Ended up living in the bush because by then I knew I really wanted to live in the bush, and I thought, to live in the bush, you need to be a farmer. So I was a farmer and went broke. Marriage failed, there was a drought. And I was living in a shed in the bush with, actually, it would be a wombat, a black snake, and my baby son, and with a drought. And I needed $106.44 to register my car. So I sent a book to the publisher. And I tell this story often, and it's a funny one to kids, but I leave out the fact that it really was a pretty desperate time. The wombat hated my typewriter. It was a really old one I'd found at the dump, and he used to leave his droppings on it every night, which meant that the E was all soft and squishy when you pressed it. And so I had to write my first book, Rainstones, without using the letter E. And years later, I heard from Angus and Robertson where I'd sent it because it begins with A, the first one in the phone book. They opened it, gave a shriek of laughter, said it was the messiest, worst spelt manuscript they'd ever seen. And the editor sat in the middle of the office to read a bit out to everyone because she thought it would be unintentionally hilarious. And she read the first paragraph, she read the second paragraph, and then there in the office she read the entire story out to everyone, and 3 weeks later they had offered me a contract. Except they were then taken over by another publishing house, which was taken over by another publishing house, so it took several years before the book actually came out, and by then I'd got columns in various media and had written a couple of gardening books too, and had discovered that, yes, you can make a living as a writer. Now, it's not easy. Everyone who wants to do it can't do it. But no one would ever say to a kid who, say, wanted to be a barrister, no, dear, you can't be a barrister. There aren't many barristers in Australia. There aren't many neurosurgeons in Australia. And there aren't many authors who make a living from writing. But there are probably more authors making a living from writing than there are barristers. And anyway, that was about 25 years ago, and I've been making a living from my writing ever since.
And that's
an extraordinary joy and privilege.
Fantastic, Jackie. I love that story, and I'm so glad that you talked to the listeners about your story today. Now, you've written over 140 books. Where, apart from your Wombat, where do you get your ideas from? I mean, that's just amazing. 140 books, sorry.
They're very different books, and that does help. I write everything from history for adults, like Let the Land Speak, to books like Diary of a Wombat, picture books with all sorts of fiction in between. And that does make it easier. I think if I wrote in one genre, I could probably only write one or at the very most 2 books a year. But writing in different genres means that you're using different material, different voices, etc., and you don't get brain dead. But also, too, I'm always surprised that authors tend to only write in one genre. Most people I know, most passionate readers, which includes authors, usually read in many genres. So for me, it's more a question, why don't more people write 140 or 160 books in 20 years rather than just a few?
Now, one of the stories that you've written, and one of the series, is the Matilda series. Tell us about the Matilda series.
The Matilda series is trying to put the history of our nation into fiction, but also it's a love song to the land and to the nation of Australia. It begins in 1892 with young Matilda, who is 12 years old, and she is the daughter of the Swaggy, the iconic Swaggy in Waltzing Matilda. And it will follow her and her family and associated families, like the McAlpines from The Girl from Snowy River, Blue McAlpine's family from The Road to Gundagai. It will follow them through. I was going to stop at 1969, but now I think I've actually grown far too much in love with the series to stop then, so there will be at least another. So Matilda's going to have to live to at least 96, I think, to put everything I want to into it. But look, that first book is the story of how we became one nation from the point of view of people who didn't have a voice, from the women, the Chinese, the Afghans, the indigenous people, the people who had no vote. But very much too, and through the entire series, it's the voices of the women. The book I've just finished, the heroine is Nancy of the Overflow. Now, I fell in love with Clancy of the Overflow when I was about 12 years old. But all of the stories we've got, the bush stories, from men like Banjo Patterson, Henry Lawson, they show women either as victims, like the drover's wife, these desperate women of the outback, or else romantic, the girl who waits by the skip rail for you. We've got this strong Clancy of the Overflow, but where is Nancy of the Overflow? And yet they were there too. The women who went droving, the women who managed properties, the women who did extraordinary things. And it's time that we put them back into our history and back into our historical fiction.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much for writing those. Yes, women do need to be heard more of and from, I think. Now, when I was researching you, Jackie, I came across a fascinating book called Big Burps, Bare Bums and Other Bad-Mannered Blunders, 365 Tips on How to Behave Nicely. How on earth did this one come about?
It was an email from my nephew asking why about manners. And I just emailed back and said, can you imagine James Bond doing that? And that is really what the book is about. When you ask kids, kids need to understand why we've got good manners. Good manners are just like sort of the oil in the machine that keeps things moving. But even kids who don't understand why you shouldn't eat with your mouth full, say, okay, imagine James Bond eating with his mouth full, and they say, oh, yuck. So, okay, that is why you don't eat with your mouth open, because it looks yuck. So that is what that book is. It's really explaining why we have got manners, and that at its very basic, manners are making things happier and more comfortable and stopping people being hurt and embarrassed.
Exactly. Manners are very important and something that is sorely lacking in Australia in 2014, I believe.
Yes, compassion and thinking, how are other people going to feel if I do this?
Well, I'm very proud to say that I've taught my kids manners, and from their teachers in preschool, I have always heard your child has lovely manners. So I'm very happy about that.
Yes, manners matter, but they don't have to be the formal thing. They're the old-fashioned thing of a man always having to walk on the outside of a street.
Oh, no.
The best-mannered bloke I know, a few years ago, he brought a friend down here. She wandered up the creek and she didn't come back again for about 4 hours. She just got carried away with the beauty. And by the time she got back, we were all absolutely worried. We'd called out rescue squads, etc. And she was just so humiliated and embarrassed. And we were all humiliated and embarrassed, and we didn't know really what to say because she was saying, I'm so sorry, I've caused all this fuss. And we couldn't say, no, you haven't caused a fuss. And this friend just rubbed his hands and grinned and said, and now for the spankings. And it was perfect. It was the most perfect example of this is good manners. It diffused everything.
Yeah. We
laughed and we made jokes about spankings, and everyone was comfortable again. Instead of this hideously uncomfortable situation, we were all laughing.
Exactly. We need to get back to the basics. Please and thank yous. That's all it takes.
Please, thank you, and does this person need help? And what can I do?
Yes.
Thinking of other people and how to make things nicer.
Exactly. Thanks for joining me on the Author's Shelf this afternoon. I'm chatting with author Jackie French. Jackie, congratulations on your recent appointment as the 2014 and 15 Australian Children's Laureate. Tell us, where were you when you got the call?
Oh, cooking dinner. I took part of the call and then said, oh, can you wait a second while I go and turn the burners off? And then we chatted for about 20 minutes, I think, about the role of a laureate and what it would mean. And then finally it dawned on me and I said, are you offering me the job? And they said, yes. It did take a while to sink in.
So you're a bit stunned then, that you'd probably say that was your first reaction. I'm glad you remembered to turn the burners down.
Oh, look, even before I realised what they were talking about, I definitely turned the dinner off. One of the advantages of being an author and having your study only a couple of rooms away from the kitchen is that you can have RSI breaks and cook, which is very nice. So I'm very practiced at turning the stove off when I answer the phone.
I'm glad to hear that. Now, for those who are not familiar with what the Children's Laureate is, can you just give us a quick rundown?
It's primarily to represent Australian children's literature, both in Australia and overseas, to promote the power of reading, to promote the power of books. That's the basic role. On top of that, it's probably whatever the individual laureate wants to make it. Children's laureates in the USA, in the UK, usually have got particular projects that they want to do during the term of their laureateship. So we've got the basic roles, and then it's what you do on top of that.
Now, your chosen theme is share a story.
Yes, and I'm hoping that there are going to be many, many ways of sharing stories in the next 2 years. But two of those, I would love parents and teachers to send ideas to the Laureate website about how we can make reading more exciting for children, about schemes for kids with learning difficulties, what works and what doesn't. If you're a grandmother, what really works when you're reading to your kids. So if you could send your stories to the Laureate website so we can share stories there. But I'm also asking kids, and that's been fascinating, how can we make school better? What don't you like about school? Or even, for some kids, why I hate school and what we can do about it. And I'm getting the most fascinating responses from kids. When you actually ask kids what they would like in school, you get things that you didn't expect. One kid in the Northern Territory, for example, told me that he thought school should start at 4 in the afternoon because, actually by then it's not so hot. And he said, by then you've done all the interesting stuff. Now there's an incredibly high truancy rate in the Northern Territory, and his idea makes so much sense. At 4 p.m. you've done the interesting things, and you're debounced, and you are ready to learn. So you are prepared to go to school, sit down in your seat, and concentrate. A girl last week had a fabulous idea of having a dress library at school, so that when you're 6, you might go to your dress library and you might decide you're going to wear a tiara that day. And when you're an adolescent or a teenager, then you're actually making clothes for the dress library, so you can all decide at the beginning of the year what your school uniform is going to be, or you might have pink soft day. And so you can borrow things like tiaras from the school library, but also you get to make and design clothes. A 5 3/4-year-old boy wanted time for inventions. And until he said that, I hadn't realized that kids are incredibly creative. They love inventing things.
They do.
And yet, until high school, when a few kids will be allowed to do inventions, there are no inventions in school. Now, one of the things that characterize us as human beings is we are an incredibly inventive species. But we don't have that in our schools, and he's quite right.
No, we don't.
We need time and lessons to invent things.
We do. It's all very structured, isn't it, when you think of it like that, when you take a step back and think of it?
Well, we can even structure in inventions. We can just have an invention library, which will be, you go there and you can ask individual teachers who've got specialties in that area, how do I do this? Things to make things with. In fact, 2 boys wanted a collection of things to make forts in school grounds. As they said, the problem at school is there's nothing to make forts with. And they're right. There are very few things in schools that you can play pretend with. There are things for education, but mostly there aren't things you can pretend with. They're all single-purpose things. And so, yes, we need more things to pretend with. We need more things to invent. We need more places where kids can build forts and things to build them from. And we need inventions. So many kids say they want to be able to discuss their lessons with their friends. Not necessarily talking to us about anything, but one of the best ways to learn is actually discussing it with someone else, or even being able to ask the kid next door, I don't get that. What did they mean by that? And that would be far more efficient learning, and that's what kids want. If every teacher was given a small $20 lapel microphone, and if kids were given earplugs so that they weren't distracted by noises around the class, and mostly all they heard was the teacher's voice, but they could take the earplugs out if they wanted to ask the kid next door, can you explain that to me? And so many kids feel that they're trapped in the classroom and trapped behind the desks. They want more lessons outside. They want more lessons moving. They really feel that at school they're in prison. And it shouldn't be like that. Humans are natural learners. We should love learning. And in fact, kids naturally do love learning. And if they don't love learning, then we need to see what's going wrong. Just as if they don't love reading, we know we're not giving them the right books to read.
Jackie, I think I found your next role. I think it will be Minister for Education.
No. I'm actually much better at making suggestions and asking questions than I am carrying things out.
Okay, all right, then let's just go for the top job. Jackie French for PM. How about that one?
No, look, I think children's laureate is perfect. I get to ask the questions, I get to make the suggestions, but
Fantastic.
other more capable people get to organise them. And also say, sorry, it sounds like a good idea, but in fact it's not a very good one at all.
Fantastic suggestions there, Jackie. Thank you. Now, as you said, it's important to read to children from a young age, but to continue that bond as they grow older, and then hopefully they'll carry it on to their children when they become parents. What do you think about children and their growing obsession with social media and electronic distractions?
They're not always distractions. It depends what they're doing. We are changing from a paper world into an electronic one. E-books are growing at an extraordinary rate per year. Many schools now don't have kids lugging great big heavy bags of books. They're getting just about all of their textbooks on e-books. I was watching my goddaughter at Christmas. Every time she had a spare 5 minutes, she turned on her iPhone and she kept on reading her book, which means that instead of putting a book in your handbag, you can now have 53 books on your iPhone. So social media is not necessarily bad. It is the way that kids communicate with their friends often, and two, that isn't necessarily bad either. The hard thing for parents, though, is it's harder to supervise. You don't know whether your child's best friend is taking photographs and putting them on their Facebook page that you think really shouldn't be there or are in the wrong context. Our children's world is so different from the world when we were growing up. So it's difficult, I think, for us to work out what our roles are and how best to do it. And I think that really is the major problem. Not that it's necessarily bad, but it's new. So we need to work out ways of guidance. And, well, it's that wonderful classification for movies, parental guidance recommended, which is really the case with all of life. Parental guidance definitely recommended. And with electronic media, we're still searching for ways to give that guidance.
We are. All right, now let's get back to your books. Tell us about Diary of a Wombat. How was Diary of a Wombat born?
I fell in love with wombats when I first met one, which was about 40 years ago. It is impossible to look at a wombat and not smile. There is something intrinsically ridiculous, but also so self-possessed. A wombat never, ever says they're sorry. They're never embarrassed. A wombat is the centre of its own universe. And I made friends with many wombats, and Diary of a Wombat came out of a very close friendship with a wombat called Mothball, who had been raised by humans and so had learned that rolled oats and carrots were good things to eat. And I was on the phone to a friend, and he was saying, "Oh, what's that noise?" I was saying, "Oh, well, that's just Mothball tearing up the doormat." And what's that noise? "Oh, that's just Mothball bashing up the garbage bin." And what's that noise? It's just Mothball chewing her way through the back door. And I realised that in the course of that phone call, I was describing the diary of a wombat. So Diary of a Wombat is the almost true story of one very stroppy and very, very beloved wombat, Mothball. And by the way, her daughter still lives in the hole underneath our bedroom, and it still tries to bite your ankles when you go outside. I think she's angry because we give her carrots, and she doesn't like the fact that she's beholden to us for carrots, and she's trying to teach her daughter Wild Whiskers to bite humans too, but so far Wild Whiskers has been a nice little wombat.
Now, you've offered to read us Diary of a Wombat, which we're going to do. We're going to take a short break. Now, I was going to play Fleetwood Mac. I'm not going to play Fleetwood Mac. I'm going to go straight into our promo because I want to keep talking to Jackie French. So if you don't want to hear Jackie speak, go and listen to Fleetwood Mac somewhere else. Jackie, I'll give you a minute or so to get ready, and then we're going to hear from you with Diary of a Wombat.
Sounds fun.
It's time for the Author Shelf giveaway. Da da da!
Thank you, Charlotte. It's time for another Author's Shelf giveaway. Jackie's publishers, HarperCollins, have very generously donated 2 Jackie French book packs to give away. For your chance to win, pop over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Author's Shelf, and tell us what is your favourite Jackie French book. We'll randomly select 2 winners and announce them on our next show. Now, I've put pictures of those books up on our Facebook page today. So go over, pop over, have a look. Tell us which is your muck that one up, your favourite Jackie French book, and we'll randomly select 2 winners. Now, you're listening to The Author's Shelf on 2SSR 99.7 FM, Sound of the Sutherland Shire. Jackie, are you ready to read Diary of a Wombat?
I am. Now, people are going to have to imagine they can see Bruce Watley's absolutely hilariously wonderful illustrations, and only Bruce could work out how you illustrate a brown wombat in a black night. And also remember, it took me 3 years to write this book, this very short book I'm about to read out. Okay, will I start?
Go for it.
Monday, morning, slept. Afternoon, slept. Evening, ate grass. Scratched. Night, ate grass. Slept. Tuesday, morning, slept. Afternoon, slept. Evening, ate grass. Night, ate grass. Decided grass is boring. Scratched. Hard to reach the itchy bits. Slept. Wednesday, morning, slept. Afternoon, mild, cloudy day. Found the perfect dust bath, which is in front of very, very astonished human beings having a barbecue. Discovered flat, hairy creature invading my territory. Doormat. Fought major battle with flat, hairy creature. Won the battle. Demanded a carrot. The carrot was delicious. Evening. Demanded more carrots. No response. Toot Wendell. For Pete's sake, give us some carrots. 8 carrots. Scratched. Went to scoop. Thursday morning, slept. Afternoon, discovered the perfect scratching post and devastation. Evening, demanded carrots. No response. Tried yesterday's hole. Curiously resistant to my paws. Someone has walked up the back door. Bashed up garbage bin, 2 carrots appeared. 8 carrots. Began new hole in soft dirt. Went to sleep. Friday morning, slept. Afternoon, discovered a new scratching post. Also discovered new source of carrots. Evening, someone has filled in my new hole. Soon dug it out again. Night, worked on hole. Saturday morning, moved into new hole. Afternoon, rained. New hole filled up with water. Moved back into old hole. Evening, discovered even more carrots. Never knew there were so many carrots in the world. Carrots, delicious. Night, finished carrots. Slept. Sunday, morning, slept. Afternoon, slept. Evening, slept. Night, offered carrots at the back door. Why would I want carrots when I feel like rolled oats? Demanded rolled oats instead. Humans fail to understand my simple request. Am constantly amazed how dumb humans can be. Chewed up 1 pair of boots, 3 cardboard boxes, 11 flower pots, and a garden chair, till they got the message. 8 rolled oats, scratched, went to sleep. Monday morning, slept. Afternoon, felt energetic. Wet things flapped against my nose on the way to the back door. Got rid of them. Demanded oats and carrots. Only had to bash the garbage bin for 5 minutes before they arrived. Evening. Have decided that humans are easily trained and make quite good night dug a new hole to be closer to them. Slept.
Thank you very much, Jackie. That's wonderful. Now, you mentioned in the opening of the show that you have dyslexia, and you're also an advocate for the rights of children with learning difficulties. What resources are there to assist children with dyslexia and other learning difficulties in 2014?
The quick answer to that is simply not enough. Most schools do have learning support teachers, but too often kids are only given an hour a week. Too often kids who have got learning problems have got no diagnosis to see what it is. Now, they may have a problem distinguishing sounds. Not that they're deaf, but they find it hard to distinguish sounds or understand sounds. They may have tracking problems. They may have coordination problems. They may, in fact, have just missed out on whole stages of learning because of stress, because they've been moving around. There are hundreds of reasons why kids may have problems. And most importantly, they need diagnosis, because for a lot of them, if they go to a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, a specialist ophthalmologist, these problems can be cured, and then the kids need to catch up. But increasingly, most of the catch-up or the learning support is done by volunteers. If a kid is slow with learning, they're often given to volunteer parents or volunteers from the community to help them with their literacy. Now, often this works wonderfully, and often these volunteers have been superbly trained, but often they have not been trained, and all the kid is being taught is that they are stupid because they are not learning the way others are. At other times, well, for example, the form of dyslexia I've got, I find it very, very hard to focus on a few words on the page, and if someone points and runs their finger under the line, I get so disorientated, I feel nauseous, and I start feeling dizzy as well. The world just goes around. I cannot focus. The only way I can read is actually in chunks down the page. So for someone with my form of dyslexia, and it's a very, very common form, the standard ways of being shown how to read are counterproductive. They're just going to make me dizzier and more uncoordinated. So what we've got is good, but we need more. We need much more. Kids who have got problems need at least an hour a day so you can build on things. They need learning support from people who are trained to give it with consistent programs, not a bit here and a bit there and an hour a week. But mostly it's that we need a new community realization that every child can read and every child has the right to read. We're using that plan, I think, in the wrong way. Instead of actually saying, oh, this school is wonderful because it's got so many kids who are doing better than the average, we need to be using it to identify the kids who have problems and say that every child must learn to read. If a child has been at a school for a year or more and cannot meet the benchmark of their peers, now that's not the national benchmark, but the benchmark of their peers, of other kids in their situation,
yes,
then the school has failed. If a child can't focus on words, they can learn with Braille. There are many, many ways kids can learn. They can use with a tactile, feeling fluffy letters, etc. There are so many ways kids can learn to read. But until we say that the chief priority in every school is that every child must learn to read, nothing is as important. Not wonderful ovals of grass, not school excursions to Canberra. The one complete, absolute priority is that every child should read and read fluently. Because you were talking earlier about the electronic age. Increasingly, even kids' social life involves reading. 40 years ago, a kid who couldn't read had a choice of many other things that they could do. They could still have a very, very successful life and hide the fact that they were illiterate. But these days, kids who can't read are cut off not just from education and from a whole range of jobs, but they are cut off with communication with most of the rest of the world.
Exactly. Okay, thank you very much for that, Jackie.
99.7 2SR FM.
I have so many more questions that I want to ask you, Jackie. I've been madly going through all my questions while we've been listening to Faith Hill with Breathe. Now, tell us about the Road to Gundagai, Jackie.
The Road to Gundagai is the third in the Matilda saga, and Blue has been imprisoned in her aunt's house. She has escaped the fire that's destroyed her home. Her legs have been fused together by a scar, and she believes that someone is trying to kill her, to poison her with arsenic. She escaped to a circus, but no one at the circus in the time of the Depression is what they seem. Madame both tells and creates futures. The smiling harem dancer is actually Fred with laughing eyes. The bearded lady is Fred. The hunchback dwarf is a 7-year-old acrobat. No one is what they seem, and the circus travels through New South Wales, bringing hope and laughter to the communities of the Depression. But somewhere a murderer is waiting to strike again.
Ooh, very, very interesting.
Well, I hope it is.
It sounds very interesting. I like that. Now, I was going to tell the listeners about how I first became acquainted with you. I'm going to do that very quickly because, as I said, we're running out of time. You were on Burke's Backyard. I was mesmerised by you as a storyteller, jumping around my TV screen dressed as a fairy. Now, when we spoke the other day, you told me that you didn't see yourself on Burke's Backyard because you didn't have a TV.
Well, I still don't. We haven't owned a TV with TV reception for more than 40 years, though we do watch a lot of DVDs. Burke's Backyard came about accidentally, and look, it was enormous fun, but dressing up as a fairy, all of that was an accident too. There was a very grumpy producer who, in fact, was only there for a few weeks, and I'd mentioned a medieval legend about restoring virginity by sitting on a comfrey bush. He said, "Oh, well, we have to show a medieval version." So I said, "All right," and went up to the bedroom and got dressed up as a medieval virgin and sat on the comfrey bush. And from then on, dressing up in various costumes and basically being funny became part of the show. But dressing up with a fairy, it didn't work out the way I intended to. I thought I would just be a fairy on the ground, but the producer at that time decided to haul me up a tree with a rope over a branch. And of course, I was going round and round in circles, and the producer yelling, "Look at the camera!" And my husband saying, "Don't bump against the tree." And they managed to cut just enough footage when I was looking at the camera in between going round and round and round to make it seem as though I was really flying through the bush. Luckily, we can do things with special effects these days, so I wouldn't have to have been hauled up on a rope. But it was enormous fun, but even though it appeared every Friday, or we appeared every second Friday, really they just came down 2 or 3 times a year and did a whole lot of segments. So it actually wasn't a very large part of our lives.
Okay. That's, as I said, that's where I fell in love with you, Jackie, and lots of Australians fell in love with you, watching you on Burke's Backyard. Now tell us, who is Pete the sheep?
His name was Dunmore, and he was a very, very special sheep. He would do anything for a milk arrowroot biscuit. And Pete the sheep, the idea for Pete the sheep, now in Pete the sheep, all the other shearers have sheepdogs, but Pete has got a sheep. Sean has got a sheep called Pete, and the other shearers don't like it because real shearers have sheepdogs. So Pete and Sean open a hairdressing salon for sheep, where you can get absolutely stunning haircuts. Now, back in the 1978 drought to 83 drought, I had sheep. We were sheep farmers. And a friend, in fact, had 2,000 sheep, and it cost more, would have taken more to actually take those sheep to the sale yard than they would have got. And there was very little water, there was no feed. So we came up with a scheme. We would give a sheep to every school in Australia and every preschool so they could eat the nice green grass on the oval. And then, of course, they need shearing, so we'd become a team of specialist shearers. And we'd go around every school giving the sheep absolutely fabulous haircuts. But Luckily it rained before we did it. So Pete the sheep is based on Dunmore, who really would round up all the other sheep as long as he got a biscuit at the end of it. And the fabulous people from Monkey Bar Theatre for Young People have turned it into a musical, and it opens on the 29th of March. So take your schools, take everyone, because it is going to be so much fun. It's got singing, it's got dancing, it's got a lot of people going bah and woof woof woof. But it's also about the right to be different. Okay, everyone else might have a sheepdog, but sheep are okay too.
Exactly. And if it was so simple, just for a milk arrowroot biscuit.
Well, I have to say, we didn't try him with any other biscuit. He also got being scratched behind the horns. He'll go weak at the knees and sort of collapse with a look of ecstasy on his face. He was a black sheep, of course.
Now tell us, what do you love most about writing?
The fun. Writing is a bit like time travelling without getting car sick. You can go anywhere and do anything. I discovered the joys of writing when I was 6, and I'd run out of books, and it was a boring Sunday afternoon, and I thought I'll write a story. And I did, and I realised when you write a story, you can be anywhere and you can do anything. But most of all, it's the fun. I think that is what we desperately need to communicate to kids. If kids don't find reading fun, then we're not giving them the books that they love. It's almost secret adult business. And look, reading is good for you. Reading really does make kids more intelligent. It creates more neurons in the brain. Reading is good for you. But reading isn't like broccoli. You don't have to eat every bit on your plate because it's good for you. We need to teach kids that the reason grown-ups read is because we love it and because it's fun. And if a kid doesn't like a book, we're all different. We like different things to eat and we like different things to read. So we need to give them the freedom that if a book is boring, put it down and get another one. And if you're not someone who likes fiction or even funny books, if you're a very serious-minded person, then you can read non-fiction and have that available in schools too. But most of all, it is just wonderful being a writer, being a reader, and for that matter being a children's laureate, is that simple message. Books give you the power to imagine what you can do in your life and the tools to do it. And more than anything else, they're fun.
I could just listen to you talk forever, Jackie. Now, coming up next on 2SSR is the Macedonian radio show with Millet. Are you an emerging children's author or illustrator? Do you want to take that next important step on your creative journey? Why not visit creativekidstales.com.au? There you can display your work, network with others and find useful tools such as a complete publisher's listing, competition information, writing tips, author interviews and a whole lot more. This month on Creative Kids Tales, they've launched their first writing competition for the year, so pop over to Creative Kids Tales website today. What are you waiting for? Plus you can also read excellent interviews with authors such as Jackie French. As I said, I'm chatting with Jackie French today. We've almost come to the end of the show. I am fighting the clock back desperately, but it's not working. Jackie, you were going to read from another one of your books from us. We've run out of time, unfortunately, but I do invite you to come back again and I can go through all the other questions that I haven't asked you on today's show and you can read for us. Would you like to come back at another point in time?
I would love to, and you've probably found out why I've written 160 books. It's very hard to stop me talking.
No, it's just wonderful. I've just, like I said, we're going to play more music, but I want to hear you speak. I don't want to hear any music. They can make it up later in the week on the show. That's fine. All right, I do have one final question for you, Jackie. What's the best advice you can give up-and-coming authors?
To think. You don't need one idea for a book. You need 1,000 good ideas. And don't make it secondhand. The first idea you get is probably based on a book you've read or something you've seen. But the more you think about your idea, the more original it gets. Good books, it's not the writing that makes a fantastic book. It's fantastic ideas. The more fascinating the idea, the more fascinating the book. And the more fascinating the idea, the easier it is to write the book because you will be so fascinated with the book that you'll find that you are just writing page after page after page because you are fascinated with what's happening. So the most important advice is to think. Think and keep thinking. Go for a walk, have a long shower, go for a swim, all of which I find are wonderful ways for me of getting ideas flowing. Have a cup of coffee, eat some chocolate, but only after you've written the first chapter. But mostly think and make it fascinating and fun.
And have a play with the wombats.
And relax by looking at the wombat, yes.
Thank you very, very much, Jackie French. You've been very gracious with your time today, and we'll call this part 1 of the Jackie French interview, and I'll try and organise with Jackie to come back on the show very soon. Don't forget our giveaway this week. If you'd like your chance to win one of Jackie French's book packs, visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Author's Shelf, and tell us what's your favourite Jackie French book. We'll pick 2 winners and announce them on our next show. If you'd like to find out more about Jackie French, and I'm sure that you would, visit her website. It's www.jackiefrench.com. Well, that's all from us today on this special edition of The Author's Shelf. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back on the 23rd of February with children's author